authority as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's please have the jurors brought in.
Yes, Your Honor. All right, please. Please all present count for Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, we're back on the record on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. We just completed the lunch recess and the state continues with its case in chief. The state may call its next witness.
The state calls Colby Ryan.
Solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you.
All right, now that the witness has been sworn, I'll just inquire, Mr. Ryan, these trial proceedings have been streamed live on the court's YouTube channel and open for public access. Have you review taken place?
No.
Oh, and actually,
I was just going to note, Your Honor, Mr. Ryan is not subject to the exclusionary warrant.
I appreciate you pointing that out, Mr. Wood. That's correct. So as a statutorily definite, with the definition here, he would not be subject to that. So disregard my inquiry. Mr. Wood, you can go ahead and proceed.
And before I do, Your Honor, may I be handed states exhibits 6 and 4?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ryan.
Good afternoon.
Can you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yes. Colby Ryan, Ryan.
Mr. Ryan, who is your mother?
Lori Vallow.
How many siblings do you have?
4.
Okay, can you tell us their names?
Cole, Zach, Tylee, and JJ.
And Cole and Zach, what is your specific relationship or relation to them?
They're my stepbrothers.
Who was their father?
Charles Vallow.
Your Honor, may I publish?
Yes, that's an admitted exhibit, correct?
Yes, this is State Exhibit 6.
Okay, yes. You may.
Mr. Ryan, do you recognize that individual?
Yes.
Who is that?
That's my sister Tylee.
What is your specific relation to Tylee?
She's my half sister on my mom's side.
So you share a mother.
Mhm.
Your Honor, may I publish State's Exhibit 4?
Yes,
Mr. Ryan, do you recognize that individual?
Yes.
And if you need a drink of water, I don't know if there's tissues up there.
I'm good.
Who is that?
That is my brother JJ.
And what is your specific relation to JJ?
He is my adopted brother.
Do you recall when JJ was adopted?
Yes.
Do you know who Charles Vallow was?
Yes.
Who was he?
He was my stepfather.
And when you say stepfather, how was he your stepfather?
He married my mom.
Uh, how long was he married to your mom?
Over 10 years.
All right. And what was your relationship like with Mr. Vallow?
He was my dad. It was good.
So, is it fair to say you were close with him?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall when Mr. Vallow passed away,
Yes.
or Charles Vallow? If I say Charles, we understand who we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Do you recall when he passed away?
Yes.
Uh, when was that?
July 11th, 2019.
How did you hear about him passing away?
My mom called me and told me that he had had a heart attack
And do you remember about what time of day that was?
between like 1 and 3 o'clock, something in that afternoon.
In the afternoon?
Mhm.
Did you have any reason to not believe her that that's how he passed away?
No.
Did you have any occasion to go over and to your mother's house that day?
Yes.
And where was that house located?
In Gilbert, Arizona.
Do you know approximately what time you went over?
And I got off at work at 7, so around 7:30, 7:45.
What happened? What was the first thing you saw when you got there?
Tylee opened the door and hugged me, and she was crying. And then I saw my Uncle Alex sitting on the couch with a bandage around his head. And then I saw my mom in the backyard, and that was it.
Did you go into the house?
Yes.
Did you see your brother JJ there?
No.
Did you speak with Alex Cox at all that night?
Yes.
How did that conversation go? What did he say to you?
Objection, hearsay.
Statement of a co-conspirator, Your Honor.
overruled.
Tell us about the conversation with Alex Cox. Well, and before we do that, what was your relation to Alex Cox?
He was my uncle.
And you testified you saw him with something white wrapped around his head.
Yes.
Did you speak to him at all that night?
I asked him what was on his head, and he said that Charles had hit him in the head with a bat and that he had shot him in self-defense.
And is that how you learned how your stepdad died?
Yes.
Did he tell you anything else about that altercation?
No.
And did you ever have any other occasion to speak to him about that altercation?
No.
You said you saw your mother that night. And what was her demeanor?
Calm. Unrattled.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was crazy. So I was freaking out, and she seemed to not care.
And did you speak to your mother that night about how Charles had actually died?
Yes.
How did that conversation go?
She told me there was a fight and ran through it very quickly. And it was just in shock. I can't remember exactly what she said, but she just basically gave me a very quick version of the story.
Did she tell you why she had lied to you earlier?
No,
Do you remember if you asked her?
I don't remember.
Did you ever speak with Lori Vallow about Charles Vallow's life insurance policy?
Yes.
When was, do you know if that happened multiple times?
I know she'd mentioned it growing up. She talked to us about what would happen if either one of them, something happened to them, what would happen. I think it was a few weeks later that she brought up that she was not going to receive any of the money from Charles.
Now, let's just take a quick step back. When you say a few weeks later, what do you mean a few weeks later?
After Charles was murdered.
And she told you then that she was not going to receive that money.
Yes.
From that conversation, was it your understanding that she had been expecting to receive that money?
Yes.
And okay. When Charles was alive, did you ever have occasion to speak with Lori Vallow about her and Charles's finances?
Yes.
Was that something that came up often?
Yes.
About how often, to the best of your recollection?
I would say maybe monthly,
Mhm.
once a month.
And what was the general nature of those conversations?
From what I understood, Charles would work and then receive like a bigger amount of money, and then it would kind of run out, and then they'd make another bigger amount, and then it would run out. So it's kind of the nature of the conversation would be that they were running low on money, something to that degree.
And was that a common theme then?
Mhm.
And just to be clear, the common theme that they were running out of money.
Yes.
Do you know who Tylee Ryan's father was?
Yes.
Who was that?
Joseph Ryan.
And I know that you and Joseph Ryan have the same last name.
Yes.
Was he your biological father?
No.
But did you take his last name?
Yes.
And do you know if Mr. Ryan is alive or deceased?
He's deceased.
And do you recall when that happened?
Summer of 2018, I think. Something around that time.
You don't remember the exact date?
No.
And were you aware if Tylee Ryan received Social Security benefits after Joe Ryan passed away?
Yes.
How did you learn that?
My mom told me that she would be receiving benefits.
And do you know if she received that monthly?
Yes.
Did you ever receive money from Tylee Ryan?
Yes.
How would that usually happen?
Venmo. She would Venmo me.
Would you ever ask her for some money?
I did, yes.
And about how often would that happen?
Um, maybe I could recall asking Tylee specifically a couple times. I would mostly ask my mom, and Tylee would be the middleman between those transactions. So I'd ask my mom, and she would tell Tylee to send the money.
Speaking of that, to your knowledge, did Lori Vallow ever send you money by sending it to Tylee, who would then Venmo it to you?
Yes.
And how did you know that?
I would ask my mom, and then she said, okay, Tylee will send it over to you.
Do you recall the last time you saw Tylee Ryan?
Yes.
When was that?
It's August 30th.
And where was that?
It was outside of my work in the parking lot.
Is that in Arizona?
It was in Mesa, Arizona, outside of a gym.
And what was the nature of that visit?
My mom was very vague and said that they were leaving. She brought Tylee and JJ, and Tylee was crying and didn't say anything really. And I hugged JJ, and my mom said that they'd be back in a few weeks to visit.
Did she tell you where she was going?
No,
Do you recall if you asked?
I did ask initially.
But she wouldn't tell you?
No.
Did you receive or did you exchange text messages with Tylee Ryan on September 8th of 2019?
Yes.
What was the nature of that text exchange?
I think I had asked her to send money. And I think we had talked earlier that day a little bit. I didn't talk to her directly, but I had heard her voice, and they said that they were on a trip. And I think I'd asked her for money. I think that's what it was.
Okay. And did she respond? Do you recall?
Yes.
What did she respond?
I don't remember what she said exactly. I remember her last text that she said was just I love you and I love the girls.
And you said you heard her voice earlier that day. How did you hear her voice?
She was in the background of my conversation with my mom.
Right. And did your mom tell you where they were?
She said they're at Yellowstone Park.
Did you ever have a conversation with Lori Vallow after Charles's death about Tylee's Social Security money?
Yes.
What was the nature of that conversation?
So if I recall, she said that Tylee's money was not going to be everybody's money since she
Judge,
didn't
can I
have
have some foundation as to what time, date, place this discussion took place?
So foundation objection, Mr. Wood.
Your Honor, I'll ask a few more questions.
Thank you.
Do you recall approximately when that conversation took place?
I don't.
Okay. Was it in person?
I don't recall. I think it was on the phone, maybe.
But it was after Charles's death.
Yes.
And just to be clear, you don't recall the exact date.
No, I don't remember.
What was the nature of that conversation about Tylee's money?
Judge, again, foundation.
Overruled.
You can answer the question.
The initial question I had is, how are you going to take care of Tylee and JJ now? And I knew that she wasn't going to be receiving the money. So she said, we're going to use supplement some Tylee's money for now, and I'm gonna go work. That was what she said, and that was basically the nature. But she said we're gonna start using Tylee's money to make it through, and I think that they. I don't know if they were receiving anything for JJ, but
So you don't recall if she mentioned JJ receiving Social Security?
I don't
funds?
remember. But I know about it. I just don't remember if she said that.
Okay. And do you recall if she said anything about her receiving Social Security benefits after Charles died?
No.
The last time you saw Tylee, was that also the last time you saw JJ? And I think you said that was September or August 30th of 2019.
Yes.
I want to talk to you about November 27th, 2019.
Okay.
Were you contacted by the Gilbert police on November 27th of 2019?
Yes.
What was the purpose of that contact?
They came to our door looking for Tylee and I think JJ as well. I specifically remember them asking about Tylee first.
And what did you tell them?
I said I didn't know where they were.
Do you recall if you told them about the last time you had seen them?
I think so. I think so.
At that time, had you been concerned about Tylee?
Yes.
Why is that?
Our conversations were not normal. The way her dialect in her text, the way she spoke wasn't matching up. And I had texted her for her birthday and just things of that nature. Just wasn't getting calls, wasn't getting any contact in a normal way, and was always avoided. So I thought maybe she was upset with me, but I just didn't want to pressure her because I know she'd been through a lot.
And so you mentioned text messages. Was there a change in those messages?
Yes.
How so?
Just little things like if you capitalize the letter I in periods and emojis, just things like that. Things just didn't sound right, and it just felt off when I was receiving those texts.
Do you recall the last time you spoke with her on the phone?
The last time I directly spoke with Tylee was on the 30th with JJ on Facebook. So the same day that I saw them.
So you FaceTimed with them later that day,
Yes.
and then you never spoke with her again on the phone. But going back to those text messages, did you keep receiving text messages throughout September of 2019?
Yes.
And are those the messages that you felt were different?
Yes.
Did you respond to those messages?
Yes.
After the beginning of September, did you continue to receive money from Tylee's Venmo?
I think so.
Do you recall how often?
I think maybe a couple more times. So maybe 2 or 3.
And did you receive any more money from Lori Vallow?
Yes.
And how would she send that?
So she started sending money after I had not heard from her since that day. She started sending money on Cash App. I think she made a separate account and just tried to send money, and it kept denying it because it was a new account. I think it was all through Cash App at that point, at just random times.
Okay. And was it in response to you asking for money, or was it just sent? Do you recall?
It was just sent.
After Charles Vallow died, did you ever speak with your mom about her getting married again?
Yes.
And do you remember when that conversation was?
Maybe a few weeks after
After he passed away?
he was gone. Yes.
What did she tell you about that?
It wasn't really a conversation. She just said a one-off thing like, I'll be married again soon. And I disregarded her and told her that I think that's crazy, or maybe she's talking about in the next life. It wasn't a real conversation. It was just a comment she made, and I completely dismissed what she said.
So she didn't give you any details about who she was marrying,
No,
when she was getting married?
No.
Other than soon.
just soon. Yeah.
Did your mom ever mention the name Chad Daybell to you?
I don't think so. No, I know she was becoming spiritual, if you want to call it that, for a long time, but she doesn't. I only knew Melanie. I didn't know anybody else that she was spending a ton of time with in a
And when you say Melanie, which Melanie? are you-
Melanie Gibb.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you contact your mother after November 27th when you were contacted by the Gilbert police?
I immediately contacted her after they left.
And what did you say to her?
I asked her what is going on. Why are the cops asking me where Tylee and JJ are? And she said, I think she asked me, like, what did they ask? And I said, they asked for Tylee and JJ. And I said, what's going on? And she just proceeded to say, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about anything. And then she's like, that's it. Like, I got it.
At that point, did you know where your mother was?
No.
So she had never told you where she was.
No, we speculated based off of the Yellowstone thing, but I didn't have an idea where she actually was.
And so you didn't know she was in Rexburg, Idaho?
No.
And she never told you that?
No.
Did you try to contact your mother on Thanksgiving?
Yes.
Did she respond to you?
No.
Did you ever have contact after that with your mother before she was arrested?
I think she sent an email not too long, maybe within a couple of weeks. And the nature of the email was, everything's fine. Everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about me. I've got Jesus on my side, blah, blah, blah. But basically just saying, it's okay. I've got things handled.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wood. Cross-examination, Mr. Pryor.
Good afternoon. Can you tell me how old you are?
28.
You mentioned a number of times that you were receiving money from Tylee and Lori. Is that right?
Mhm.
And 2018, 2019.
Yes.
Sound about right?
Yeah.
4, 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Financially, is there a reason why they were sending you money?
We were just a young family and I just needed help, and I was asking my mom for help.
You were a young family with children of your own?
Yes.
Okay, and just difficulty supporting yourself.
Yeah.
So your sister Tylee was helping out,
Sometimes, yeah.
and that was consistent with her character, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Very caring person,
Very.
very kind person.
Yep.
She was in many ways more of a mother figure to JJ than Lori was. Would you agree with that?
I think she was his big sister.
Very caring of JJ, very, very protective of JJ. Would you agree with that?
She loved him. Yeah.
And she understood him better than almost anybody, correct?
Sure.
He had tremendous challenges as a young autistic, 7-year-old autistic child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of all your siblings, you would probably say that Tylee was probably the kindest, the gentlest and the most understanding of JJ. Would that be fair?
Sure.
Now, you mentioned that Lori called you to let you know that Charles had died.
Yes.
She didn't tell you that Alex gunned her down in the house, right?
No.
She lied to you,
Yes.
said it was a heart attack.
Yes.
So you're Lori's son, natural son, right?
Yes.
So Lori Vallow lied to her son the first time, saying that Charles died of a heart attack, correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of lying in a lot of places.
And Lori lied a lot to you, right?
Other people too were. Yeah.
But Lori lied a lot to you.
Yeah. And then, yeah.
And then you mentioned the name Melanie Gibb.
Mhm.
Was Melanie Gibb in on this lying to you as well about covering things up?
I didn't speak to Melanie Gibb.
Okay. But Lori and Melanie were the best of friends, right?
You could say that.
And Lori met Melanie because Melanie was teaching classes about religion and about various religious topics, and Lori gained an interest in that, and that's how that friendship started, correct?
I'm not exactly sure. She was at our Christmas party one time and then she was there as her friend. So I didn't know what their exact connection was.
When was that Christmas party?
2018.
Okay. And the two of them were together, and it was abundantly clear that the two of them were very, very close friends, right?
Sure.
Okay. At the time that your mother notified you, you were at work, is that right?
Yes.
So did you get that message while you were actually working, or was it over a break, or how did that transpire?
So I was in the middle of my workday and she called me. And then I went over there after work
And where were you working at that time?
at Anytime Fitness.
Okay. And so you took a break. Do you need to take a break?
No, you're good.
Okay. You took a break, and your mother called you or texted you and said there was a heart attack.
Yes.
No mention of self-defense.
No.
No mention that Alex shot um, Charles in self-defense, right?
No.
She was clearly lying to her son, right?
Hmm.
Now, the fight that occurred between Charles and Alex, Tylee was there, and she was implicated in that, correct?
Yes.
And she was present for that fight and that entire altercation, from what you understand, correct?
Objection, states facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
Correct?
From what I understand, yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that your father isn't Joseph Ryan, correct?
No.
But are you aware that your mother in 2018 received a sizable life insurance policy from Joseph Ryan?
I am now, yes.
You are now, like right now?
I mean, I heard that later on. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're aware that financially, Lori Vallow had a significant amount of money as of middle of 2018, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. During this time that there was
Took over. I'm not sure. I was a child.
okay, so when there was financial issues, it was your mother putting this all on Charles to provide for the family. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. And you already previously mentioned that you communicate with Tylee at least like once a month. Is that fair, or was it more frequently than that?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
You communicated with Tylee at least once a month. Was that fair?
Growing up or
Well,
you mean?
in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
Okay, and the manner that you would communicate was by text message.
primarily.
Okay. And how often would you communicate with JJ?
I mean, it really depends. Tylee and I would see them more often, so I didn't have much time for them not being around.
Okay.
So before that, it wasn't once a month. It was a lot more frequent. They
Right,
lived in the same place and I would go see them.
Okay. And when you communicated with Tylee, or excuse me, when you communicated with JJ, it was always Tylee there, right? Usually?
Yeah.
Not Lori.
She would be there too.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you saw Tylee on August 30th in Mesa, Arizona. That was the last time you saw them. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you had mentioned that Tylee was obviously upset.
Yes.
Did you have any prior information that Tylee just did not want to go to Idaho?
No, because I didn't know she was going to Idaho.
Okay. So she was obviously upset about something.
Yeah.
And it was the day that they were packing up to leave to go to Idaho. Is that right?
Yes.
And prior to that time, there was no indication that Tylee was upset about anything else. Is that right?
I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay, that's fair. You remember that, and from August 30th, you then had a FaceTime call with both Tylee and JJ later that afternoon, later that evening.
Mhm.
Do you know about what time that was?
Probably when I got home, so anywhere between 7 to 8 p.m.
Okay, and you don't know where they were at that point, though, right?
They were back at the house.
In Gilbert.
I understood.
Was Tylee still upset about the fact that she was leaving for Idaho?
Not on the phone call, no.
Okay. Now on the back in late November, you had then had an occasion to talk with you.
Yes.
And again, your mother lied to you again.
Yes.
Was Melanie Gibb there
Where?
on the phone? Any indication that Melanie Gibb was there listening in on the phone call?
No.
You don't know whether she was or not, or you just don't know?
I have no idea if she was there.
Okay. Now, your mother's a strong personality, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
She's not someone that people can tell her what to do. Would you agree with that?
Not necessarily.
Okay. So you think she could be influenced very easily, right?
That's a big gap between not influential and influential.
Okay, but you would agree that your mother is one to speak her opinion when she has an opinion about a subject, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Did you have an occasion to ever interact or observe the way your mother talks to her friends, let's say Melanie Gibb, how she interacts with someone like Melanie Gibb?
Yes.
And that sort of interaction between them, your mother was a wallflower, or did she tend to speak her opinion when she spoke with her good friend Melanie Gibb?
Can you define wildflower?
Wallflower, someone very passive, who wouldn't argue, someone who would just accept the way things are.
She did not like confrontation.
Okay.
She avoided it. So take that for what it is. I don't know.
Okay, so if getting in a discussion with Melanie Gibbs, she would avoid confrontation. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay. Did she ever tell you in late November, after the police called you, that JJ and Tylee were with Melanie Gibb?
No.
And Judge, I think that's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pryor. Can we redirect?
Just briefly.
Go ahead.
You were just asked about kind of your mother's personality,
Hmm.
whether she was a wallflower. And you said that you believed your mom had a strong personality. But that
Judge, I'm going to object. I don't recall that testimony.
Overruled.
but you said you thought your mom could be influenced.
Yes.
Earlier, you testified that your mom had become more religious over the years. And you were asked if she could be influenced.
Yes.
Do you believe your mother was influenced by Chad Daybell?
Objection, Judge.
Grounds.
It's speculation. There's no foundation to base what he's basing this on.
It's a question of belief. It's overruled.
100%. I think she could be influenced. Yes.
Okay, and my question was, do you believe she was influenced by Chad Daybell?
Judge, again, I'm going to object. Foundation, speculation.
Overruled.
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, on that very last point, if you'd like, Mr. Pryor, recross. If not, we'll be concluded with the witness. And just limited to that last line of questioning you objected on, I'll allow recross.
Your Honor, I would just note, I think that question was directly in line with his cross.
Understood. I'll allow the recross.
Judge, am I permitted to go forward?
Yes, but only on that last question or two.
Now, in August of 2018, or August of 2000, excuse me, August of 2019, you had never heard of Chad Daybell, is that right?
Correct.
And you testified previously that your mother said, and please let me get to the quote. And it was a few weeks after Charles passed away, and Charles passed away in July of 2019, right? You said, I will be married again soon, but she didn't specify who she was talking about, right?
Correct.
And at that point in July of 2019, you didn't know very much about Chad Daybell either, did you?
No.
Had never even heard the name, right?
No.
And then in August, almost September of 2019, correct?
Yeah.
You had never heard of Chad Daybell. You didn't even know where or why they were going to Idaho, did you?
No.
And then we fast forward to November, 2 months later, within 60 days, you have a conversation with your mother about where's JJ, correct? And at that point, you'd never heard or mentioned the name Chad Daybell, is that right?
Correct.
And then subsequent to that, you mentioned the fact that your mother, there was a call and a communication where your mother had been locked up. And at that point, you had a confrontation call with her. And at that point, you never heard about Chad Daybell, correct?
No, in December of 2019, there was a release, and that's how we found out that she was married
Okay,
and that the kids were missing, and that's how we found out.
okay. So after December of 2019, after everything started processing, that's when you drew this conclusion that Chad Daybell must be influencing her. It wasn't anything up until December of 2019. Is that fair?
I mean, they ran away together. So
Well, I understand that, but
Yeah.
prior to December of 2019, to your knowledge, Chad Daybell wasn't even in the picture. Is that right?
correct.
Yeah, I have nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
All right. All right, that'll conclude the testimony then of this witness. Is the witness going to be recalled at any point, Mr. Wood?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes. All right, that'll conclude the testimony of Mr. Ryan then. Mr. Ryan, you potentially may be recalled at some point in this case. If so, you'll be contacted either by the state or the defense. Otherwise, you are permitted to step down, and that concludes your testimony for today. Any further witness to call this afternoon? Well, I should say we've still got time. So who will the state be calling next, assuming we've got one?
Your Honor, the state will be calling David Warwick.
Very well.
I swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, now that the witness has been sworn, let me just inquire, Mr. Warwick, have you viewed or listened in on any of the testimony that's taken place in this trial since it started?
No,
All right, have you discussed your testimony with anyone else?
no.
Very well. Mr. Wixom, if you'd like to inquire on direct, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Warwick, will you please state your full name for the record and spell it?
David Dale Warwick.
Will you spell it for the reporter, please?
Oh, spell it. Sorry. DAVID DALEWARWICK.
Thank you. And Mr. Warwick, where do you live?
Pleasant Grove, Utah.
What do you do for a living?
A general contractor.
I'm going to ask you some questions, drawing your attention back to roughly 5 years ago. Are you familiar with the name Chad Daybell?
Yes.
How are you familiar with his name?
I think since 2012, if I recall.
When did you first become familiar, or how did you first become familiar with his name?
There was a book that he had done done a book with Julie Rowe. And I just knew that he was the author or publisher of that.
At any point in time, did you have any contact with Mr. Daybell?
At that time,
At any point in time?
yes.
When did you first have contact with him?
He reached out to me to, wanting to do a book with me,
Do you recall approximately when that occurred?
2015 is what I'm thinking that was.
How did he reach out to you?
He's communicated, he's called me, he's texted me and emailed me, and I just can't remember which one was first.
Had you ever initiated any of that contact?
No,
What was your reaction to his request that you write a book?
I just said I needed to think about it, and because of the content, I needed approval from above.
So did you decide ultimately to write a book for him?
No,
After that initial contact, however it came, did he continue to reach out to you to request this?
yes,
How often did he reach out to you?
probably 3 or 4 times over a year.
How did he do that?
Text and email mainly. I think we only had 1 phone call.
What was your reaction to those continued requests?
I just said no.
At any point in time, did you ever have any personal contact with Mr. Daybell?
Yes.
When do you recall that first happening?
The first time was at a meeting in Rigby, Idaho.
And tell the jury about this meeting. What was the meeting?
They were having a meeting about priesthood power and dealing with the darkness of this world and evil.
Who was having the meeting?
John Miller.
And approximately when did this meeting occur?
If I remember right, it was fall of 2015.
And why did you have occasion to attend that meeting?
Because John Miller reached out to me,
Did you
asked me to come.
know Mr. Miller before this?
I did not.
Did you have any understanding why Mr. Miller had reached out to you?
Yes, I had done a few firesides, and anyway, so people got to know me through others that way, and so he reached out to me thinking that I would be interested in this.
I think you indicated that this meeting occurred in Rigby, Idaho.
Yes.
And where in Rigby was this meeting?
Where?
Mhm.
It was at his home.
Do you recall who all was in attendance at the meeting?
Not everybody. Most of the people I didn't know.
Who do you recall and was at the meeting?
John Miller, Larry Hilton, Tom Harrison, Bob Walker, Hector Sosa. Now, some of these guys I met because we carpooled up, so that's why I remember their names. But then the others that were there, that's where I met Chad.
When you were at this meeting, did you have any occasion to have a conversation with Chad?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what was the conversation about and how did that come to be?
He just came up and said that he was going to go to his house, and he wanted me to come over. He said Julie Rowe and a few of her associates were coming, and they actually showed up at this meeting too. And anyway, I said, "No, I'm not here. I'm here for this meeting." And I didn't. So
What was Chad specifically asking of you?
he just asked me to come with him.
And did you eventually do that?
Yeah, so he went and talked to John Miller, and they were having a lunch break. And John said, "Yeah, go ahead and go. It'll be okay. Just, we can just resume when you get back."
At that point, did you want to go?
No, I didn't, but there was some curiosity to what's going on. So, but I just went out of respect.
And where did you go?
We went to Chad's home
Where was his home located?
in Rexburg.
What did you do at his home?
We walked around his property and this is the first time I had met Julie Rowe also. And basically she was helped telling him how the property was to be laid out and organized for tents to be set up and a building to be built for preparations.
Why did Julie Rowe explain this information? What was her basis of understanding?
My understanding is she had a vision or she was having visions. I wasn't informed on the details of what was going on. It was more of a meet and get acquainted.
Did you recall meeting anybody else at that meeting besides Ms. Rowe? Let me withdraw that and be clear. While at Chad's property, do you recall meeting anybody else besides being there with Chad and Ms. Rowe?
Yeah, there were several other men there, but I don't recall their names.
Did you ever have occasion to meet Chad's wife?
Yes,
And who was that you met?
Tammy.
When did you meet Tammy?
When we were in their living room, Chad had her come out and introduced us to his wife.
Was that at the same meeting that you were there with Julie Rowe that Chad had brought you to?
Yes,
Did Tammy participate in the conversation or walking around the property?
no, she didn't.
Any understanding why she did not do that?
I just didn't feel like she was interested, but that was just my feelings.
How did that meeting eventually end?
When we got done walking around the property, we just left and went back to John Miller's.
Did you have any other interaction with Chad at that point, at that meeting?
No,
Do you recall any other occasions that you met Chad personally after that meeting?
yes.
When's the next time that you recall having met with him personally?
There was a conference in Brigham City, Utah that I was asked to speak at, and Chad was there.
To the best you can recall, approximately when was that conference?
2017 is my guess. That's the best that would be my guess. I don't remember exactly.
But it was after your meeting at John Miller's house?
Yes.
What was your interaction with Chad at that conference?
We just talked. I saw him over there at his booth when we had a break, and I went and just talked with him for a few minutes.
Anything of note in the conversation?
No,
Did you have any impressions at that point of Chad's just general nature and his demeanor?
no, he's just Chad's always been very, very kind, very meek.
Anything else about the way he conducted himself or interacted with people at that point in time?
No,
When's the next time that you recall seeing Chad in person?
at Lori Vallow's house in Chandler, Arizona,
And when did that happen?
August of 2019.
What was your occasion for being at that meeting?
Lori, I was with Melanie and we were doing a couple firesides in Arizona. And Lori called when we were coming back down from the northern Arizona and said, "Hey, we got some friends here. We'd like you." They wanted her to bring me over to meet me. So they said they were just having like a luncheon. She had prepared food and just asked us to come and stop by.
When you say Melanie, are we speaking of your spouse?
Yes.
And who is your wife, just to clarify for the jury?
Who's what?
Who is your wife? What's Melanie?
Yeah.
What was Melanie's last name at the time?
Oh, sorry, Gibb. Sorry.
And you're still married?
Yes.
So who do you recall being at that luncheon or that meeting at Lori's house?
Chad, Lori, Melanie Boudreau, I think was her name. Alex Cox, Zalima, and then there was a lady there named Julie.
Was it the same Julie Rowe?
No,
During that meeting, was there any conversation that occurred?
yeah, it was sitting around a table and eating food, and conversation was happening while we were eating.
Anything else? What was the general subject of the conversation while you were at the meeting?
That they were talking about the 144,000 and about the gathering of the 144,000. And
I'm going to pause you there for the jury's sake. When you say they were talking about it, who was talking about the 144,000?
Chad, Lori, but they were all talking about it. It was not really a formal meeting. It was kind of a lot of conversation, and I was just picking up on what they were talking about.
To the best you can recall, what things do you remember Chad or Lori saying about the 144,000?
That they were responsible to gather them. It was their call.
Now, were these things that just one of them was saying? Let me withdraw that. Was Chad saying these things,
I don't remember which one was saying it.
but one of the two?
I would say it was one of the two because they were the host of this meeting.
Any reason to think that they both weren't embracing or believing whatever it is that they were talking about?
Yeah. Yes.
Anything else that came up in that conversation besides the 144,000?
They talked about they all have these special gifts that they were given, and what they were gonna. They talked about they had multiple lives and done things in previous lives.
When you talk about these special gifts, did they elaborate at all on these special gifts?
It was yeah, there was. I just remember a couple. One was had power over the elements of the earth and had to be in certain places a certain time to facilitate whatever God was doing.
Judge, I hate to interrupt, but could I have some foundation as to exactly which one of these guests was that talking about that?
Mr. Wixom.
Thank you. Awesome question, Judge. So you just mentioned this gift about power over the elements. Do you recall for the jury, who was it at this meeting that had those types of powers?
Zalima.
Were there any other special powers that were mentioned at the meeting?
And yeah, that I can recall, no. I remember Alex was he either knew or he was told that he was the angel that came to stop Laman and Lemuel when Nephi was being smitten.
Is that an LDS reference?
Yes.
What did Alex think about that or say about that particular belief?
He felt good because he was doing something good. He felt good that he was a good guy.
And during that meeting, did Chad ever discuss with you any role that he might want you to have in this gathering?
At that time, I don't think he did. I think it was for me just to get acquainted.
Did you have any discussions with him about your reaction to some of those things that were being taught?
Yes.
What discussion did you have with him about that?
But that if somebody's going to have the position to call the 144,000, that I felt like that would be a prophet of God that would have that responsibility.
Is it fair to say that you didn't believe that Chad was a prophet of God at that point?
No,
At any point?
no.
So did you tend to agree with some of those teachings that Chad was engaging in that day?
Judge, I'm going to object to the characterization.
I can respond.
Oh, It's overruled. Go ahead.
Did you have any disagreement? I'm sorry, let me withdraw that. You can ask the question if you remember what it was.
I'm sorry,
I'll re-ask it. Did you agree or disagree generally with the things that Chad and others were teaching at that meeting?
I disagreed.
Do you remember specifically, besides the issue of a prophet, anything else that you disagreed with?
Yeah, they did. They talked about Satan having power to push people out of their bodies and taking possession of them. And then the person's spirit would be stuck in limbo. They couldn't go forward because the body was still alive.
Did you discuss that teaching with Chad at all?
Yeah, I just said Satan was never allowed that power because that's something he wanted to do from the beginning, and God put a boundary there so he could not do that.
So you didn't believe these things, is that
No.
fair? Okay. During that meeting, did you notice anything about the way Chad and Lori interacted with one another?
They seemed really close. I mean, they were, they were really friendly with one another.
When you said really close and friendly, could you describe that more for the jury?
Well, I just noticed when Lori brought the food to the table, she kind of leaned on him as she put his plate down.
What did that indicate to you?
Affection.
For speculation.
Judge,
Sustained.
did you notice anything else about their behavior that indicated to you anything about their relationship?
No,
Had you ever met Lori before that meeting?
no.
And was there another time that you interacted with Mr. Daybell?
Yes,
When do you recall that occurring?
it was September of 2019.
And what was that occasion?
I was at Lori's house to do a podcast with Lori and Melanie. And so I was there for that weekend and Chad came over.
When you said you were at Lori's house, where was that at?
He was in Rexburg.
Did you get invited to come?
Yes.
And were you in Idaho for any other reason at that point?
We had just moved my son up to Pocatello, Idaho. So I was coming up to see them and I was coming up for the Book of Mormon Evidence Conference. And then, and Melanie and Lori had been wanting to do a podcast. And so I just kind of made a weekend of it. My plan was to stay in a hotel in Idaho Falls to be in between both places. But Melanie invited me and said, Lori said, stay here. Don't need to put money in a hotel. We got an extra room for you. So.
And that was in reference to Lori's place?
Mhm.
Is that a yes for the record?
Yes.
And can you describe Lori's place that you went and stayed at, just so the jury has an understanding of the layout?
It was, when you walked in, there was a living room and a kitchen, just one room, and then a stairs on the right that went up to the bedrooms and bathrooms.
And when you arrived, who do you recall being at her apartment?
Lori and Alex and Melanie.
What about children? Were there children there?
JJ.
Did you have any occasion to interact with JJ when you arrived there?
Yes, I tried a couple of times. He was sitting on the couch playing games. So I tried to just get to know him a little bit, but he was pretty into his game.
Did he respond to you then, or?
No.
And do you have any special needs children yourself, Mr. Warwick?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
I have a Down syndrome
What's
boy
object- what's the
with
relevance of this?
autism.
Hold on. There's a
Oh,
pending
sorry.
objection. I haven't rolled. It's
Relevance.
Judge, may I argue?
No, it's sustained, Mr. Wixom.
Okay. Did you have any further interaction with JJ at that point?
Just one more time. He was, he had a box and he was cutting windows and doors in it, just making a little toy house out of a cardboard box.
Did you try to talk to him on that occasion?
I did.
Any interaction with him then?
No,
I think you already mentioned Chad was at this meeting or gathering.
he showed up at least 2 or 3 times. He was kind of in and out.
What spent time apart?
Monday morning.
Days?
Yes.
So when you said that Chad was in and out, approximately how many times was Chad coming over that you recall?
I can be sure it may have been a 3rd time, but it's,
When he came, how long would he stay?
maybe a half hour to an hour. It was never long.
Did you have any conversations with Chad while he was there?
Yes, I did.
And Judge, could I have some foundation as to when these meetings supposedly took place?
Certainly. When do you recall, the best you can by month and year, that you were at Lori's house on this occasion?
Sorry, repeat the question.
Best you can remember, can you let the jury know what month and year were you at Lori's house on this occasion?
So September 2019.
And so back to the question about Chad. What do you remember talking to Chad about when he first?
Judge, again, I'm going to renew my foundation. We don't know which day of the week we're talking about since this was a 4-day weekend.
Well, I think that's more appropriate for cross, so
Thank you.
appropriate for cross, so
Okay.
it is vague, but Mr. Wixom, you continue.
Thank you. When's the first time over the course of the weekend that you can remember that Chad came over? Do you remember what day of that weekend it was?
It was the weekend, September 20 to 23 or 19 to 23 or 19 to 22. I mean, whatever that weekend was, I just remember I remember the 23rd. So
This has been 5 years ago.
yeah,
Do you remember, you said earlier that you were there from a Friday to roughly Monday morning.
yeah.
Do you remember which day of that weekend that you first recalled Chad coming over?
Saturday.
So when Chad came over, explain to the jury what, if any, conversation that you had with him at that time.
That's, they talked about, anyway, that's when I'm trying to remember what the reason was coming over. I don't remember the intent for the reason. But, we talked about, that's when I learned about, more of their relationship,
What did you learn?
that they were, that they had been together in past lives and that they had a mission to do together.
Did they explain at that time what that mission was together?
Yes,
What was it?
to gather the 144,000.
Did they discuss any more about their personal religious beliefs along that vein?
They just talked about terrestrial buildings that are on this earth that they can see. And
What did you understand that to mean? Did you say terrestrial or
Yeah.
terrestrial?
terrestrial.
What did you understand that to mean?
Just what it says.
Did they explain what they thought that meant?
They just said we want you to come over and we'll show it to you. So I mean, anyway,
Come over where?
it was at some park next to a church.
So did you leave the apartment and go with them?
Well, we didn't go, we just went over there and met with them there.
So you left the apartment and met them at the park?
Yes.
Who did you meet at the park?
Chad and Lori and Melanie.
And Judge, could I have some foundation as to the date or the day of the week at the time that this took place?
Mr. Wixom, it's vague. I'll overrule the objection, but it's up to you.
Do you remember which day of the weekend specifically that you would have gone to meet them at the park?
Sunday.
When you got to the park, what happened?
We just walked around the park and they described the building.
What did they describe?
About a 2-story building made of stone and arches, and that's about all I can recall.
You don't recall any specifics about the significance of the building or anything like that?
I don't.
Could you see a building the same place they were saying it was located?
No.
What did you see?
A beautiful park.
Did you perceive in any way, for your own observation, whether or not you thought Chad and Lori thought this building was there?
No.
No, you didn't perceive it?
No, I didn't perceive that. I didn't perceive that they were seeing the building. Is that what you mean?
That's my question, yes.
I'm sorry. Honestly,
Judge, non-responsive.
sorry.
Sustained.
Sir, could you tell if Chad and Lori thought the building was there?
They talked like they did, but I didn't feel any truth in it.
Did they give you any reason why they were telling you about this or trying to show you this building?
And no, there was never really any reason explained. I think they were just trying to get my confidence.
What do you mean by that?
Get me familiar with what they were doing and
What was your perception about why they were trying to get you familiar with what they were doing?
my perception was, at the time, I honestly didn't know what to expect. I was just kind of following along. But as I felt like they were just trying for me to be familiar with them and what they have and their gifts,
Did they-
so that I can be confident or more. I'm not sure if I'm coming up with the right word. More of an assurance that what they are doing is true. Kind of like trying to witness what they have.
Prior to walking around this park at any time on Friday or Saturday, had you expressed anything back to Chad about any of these teachings or beliefs that were being discussed?
I just talked to him about Satan and the evil spirits. They don't have that power. It's not going to be given them, and that the gathering of 144,000 that would be done by the prophet or somebody called under his authority.
Would it be fair to say that you'd explain to them that you weren't really accepting these beliefs?
Yeah.
Now, during this weekend, at any time, did you observe anything about Chad and Lori's interaction with each other that gave you any clues about the relationship?
They were more affectionate.
In what regard?
He walked up behind her and put his arms around her.
Anything else?
I think there was a kiss on the cheek. There was some head rubbing.
Anything about that aspect of their relationship that bothered you that weekend?
Yes.
What was it that bothered you?
That he was still married to Tammy.
Did you ever confront him about that?
Yes.
What did you say to him?
I just asked him about his marriage to Tammy, if she was, Was she happy? Was he happy with her? Was she a good wife? Was she a good mother?
How'd he respond?
He said, yes, she was very good. And he said that she was good.
Anything else in that conversation specifically?
Well, it's just, they said that Lori was going to be his next wife. They'd been married before and they're going to fulfill this mission together, and that he had a dream that Tammy was going to be passing by the time he was 50 or 51.
Did you have anything further that you said to him about that?
I just, not that I can recall. I know we talked more, but I can't recall I just felt uncomfortable that you'd have a call like that, and you're still married.
Now, when you say a call like that,
The call that he was called to gather the 144,000.
So did you have any interactions with Chad that you can recall on Sunday of that weekend? I'm sorry, I'll withdraw that. After you got back from the park, did you have any further interaction with Chad that weekend?
Yes.
What was that interaction?
He said that there was 80 acres for sale over there by his place. And I have an associate that wanted to do a development in Rexburg. And so he told me about this 80 acres that would be a good place to do it. And I just told him, I said, well, I don't have time. It's Sunday. I don't do business on Sunday, but I said, I'll go ahead and drive by it and just see if I get any vibes, and then talk to this associate of mine down in Utah about it,
What did you mean by see if you get any vibes? What did that mean?
just to see if it felt like a good place to do a development.
As a builder, does this happen with you sometimes? Do people come?
Yes.
And then how did that interaction end when you went over and looked at the property?
We followed Alex over. He took us to where it was, and we just got out and we were just looking at the property and getting ready to leave. And then Chad and a guy that he was serving with in church, a realtor named Ron, they showed up.
Any more conversation with Chad while you were there at the property?
Nah, he just wanted Ron to meet me, and then Ron wanted to go over the deal, and I just said, just send me emails on it. I don't want to talk about it today.
When you were done looking at his property, did you eventually go back to Lori's apartment?
Yes.
Did you have more conversation with Chad then at the apartment?
Now that
Did Chad ever suggest that you would have any role in this 144,000 gathering?
yes,
When did that occur? Remember what day?
I believe that was on Saturday.
And what was that conversation?
That I was to assist him in gathering the 144,000. And that's actually when I said, well, that would be a call that would come from a prophet. And two, I knew that my life, even if that call existed, my life is not in order to be able to do it, to be able to do something like that.
Mr. Rickson, I'm going to suggest we take our mid-afternoon break at this time, just give them time.
Like,
So we'll go ahead and try to come back on around 10 till if possible, to give the jurors enough time to take a break, and we'll come back on for remaining testimony.
certainly, Your Honor. Thanks.
Okay, well, I just don't get it. I don't see how these people found Chad charismatic. He seems to have all the charisma of a dead fish in my book. I just don't see it. Let's see. We were listening to earlier. Profiling Evil was going over the patriarchal blessing. So let's finish that up. Yeah, David Warwick was the only one that seemed to have any sense. Okay, let's go to the finish up the patriarchal blessing, because this blessing is so manipulative. In my opinion, he pretty much directs Alex Cox to you're gonna off yourself when we're done here. So Lori seemed to have more charisma. I will agree. Tammy, haven't seen enough of her to know if she had charisma or not, but she seemed like a sweet lady. So, yes, very gullible. Okay, here we go. Over to, let's see.
Always with your companion, you'll communicate with Mother Earth herself. You'll know where to be before natural disasters happen. That you can be on location to protect key leaders, church leaders, and to preserve who should survive. Little children, I see you gathering up little children in your arms, saving them from floodwaters. Just having a collage of moments that await you in this life, rescuing the pure and innocent, leading them to safety. Dozens of instances. And you will be looked upon as an angel on earth. You will literally glow for those who are allowed to see you. And those mortals who aren't allowed to see that will know through the spirit of the great power you possess. Proper time, after many years of service in such ways, as the second coming approaches, you will know when it's time to move to the other side. This body that has served you well will lay down one day. And you'll pass. Your spirit will leave this body. And you'll be greeted wholeheartedly and welcomed by the Savior himself. You will already know him. But that reunion will take place on a greater plane. That the spirit, you'll feel that that time, the vibration will exceed all. Before the second coming even occurs, the Savior will let that body rest a day or two. And much like himself, you will be raised and be resurrected. So that when the Savior does return, you will be right at the front of that amazing team of angels. It will sweep the earth. Much like described in the renewed earth, you will be there. It will bring you great joy to help Mother Earth transfer to a terrestrial realm, to burn away the celestial refuse. At that time, you and Holly will still have assignments here temporarily, but then you will move forward. She's already preparing a world for you two, and you will be able to be an eternal family with eternal children on that earth. And the glory will just continue for you out, on and on through eternity. So I bless you at this time with strength, power, and dominion over the callings you'll receive, and that you are part of a very special team of people that are moving towards translation and transfiguration, and that the Lord will be with you at all times. You will be a patriarch in your own home. You will give blessings similar to this. Your veil will be essentially gone. You'll be able to see into the past and into the future for these individuals and share with them the same type of knowledge and truth. I bless you with protection throughout your mortal life, that angels will now be assigned to you as you've reached this vibration. You have 9 angels assigned to you now to watch you from all sides through your faithfulness. I know you will stay faithful. You have a great mission. I protect you. I bless you with a strong protection against Satan and his followers, Lucifer, Cain, anyone else who seeks to oppose you. You will feel a new vitality and strength against them, and to use your priesthood to defend against them. I close this patriarchal blessing by assuring you that you will rise to an eternal glory, and that you will have an eternal family, and that your exaltation is assured through your faithfulness. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
When they text to say it's been a day, when they need a hug but they're miles away,
Let's
how do you
see.
send comfort?
Yeah, some
In
final
legitimate
observations.
settings where these blessings are given, members believe that they can receive special prayers that can provide guidance in their life. They call this that patriarchal blessing that's talked about. And it's only given according to the Church of Jesus Christ of by seasoned and trusted leaders in the church. Chad was neither of those. And now he did, according to public record, hold some kind of a local congregation position like a clerk or something. But certainly he did not hold a weighty leadership position in that faith. And I think there's a real distinction there. Latter-day Saints that are faithful believe these blessings provide them with personal insight and instruction. And oftentimes they believe that these blessings that come, in their opinion, from God might contain admonitions and warnings such as, hey, abstain from harmful drugs or harmful materials. The website said that the blessings are guidelines, and that no one but the person receiving the blessing should interpret its meaning in their life. I find that interesting because, again, this is an example of how these cult leaders take something legitimate in nature, whether you believe it or not, legitimate in nature, and twist it for their own needs. Now, the prosecution in Chad Daybell's murder trial is suggesting that Chad Daybell may have used this opportunity to bless or instruct Alex Cox in what was also his long-range goal of murder, convincing Alex that through this thing that Alex was somehow legitimizing, that this is what the God they believed in wanted him to do. And I'm going to let you decide how you feel about all this and whether you think it was part of Chad Daybell's plot for power, dominion, and control. Well, we'll talk more about the Chad Daybell.
Okay, and I've pulled up a talk which says Chad Daybell's speech on the day he met Lori Vallow, October 26, 2018, preparing a people, St. George. So let's listen to that.
Hardly cracks the book open. Sunday we were playing our football in the yard and things like that. But so I did that summer. Cool. I read through the Book of Mormon and got to Moroni chapter 10 and saw the promise, and our teacher talked about the promise, and I didn't really get an answer right off the bat. I put myself through a lot of trouble. I'd go out in the field in the rain, you have to sacrifice or something. I'd go kneel down in the mud and pray, and nothing would happen. Go out in the pigeon pen and pray and things like that. Just nothing really came. Finally, a voice said, just go write in your journal. And so I did. And as I began to write, the Spirit just filled my heart, and that was undeniable. I started crying, and I still have that record. I'm glad I got to write in my journal, as that was a because I wrote, I'm feeling the Spirit right now, and I could not. And Joseph Smith was about a mission, like they always do, the opposition. I always had that experience to fall back on. And so people think, oh, we've seen visions, and that really isn't the basis of my testimony. It's the fact that the Holy Ghost testified to me. So I talk to people who sometimes think, oh, I'm just not measuring up. But if you've had this Holy Ghost experience testify to you, you're on the right path, and you'll be led to the way you should go. I compare those of us that have visions to, sadly, kind of like the Laman and Lemuel. They had an angel appear to them, but it still didn't change their ways. They needed to have the testimony of the Holy Ghost to strengthen them and to know that Jesus is the Christ. But I did when I was 17. Teeth were a little straighter by now. I'll just briefly tell about my near-death experiences. I've told them enough that I don't need a whole lot of details. But for those who haven't heard, I went on a youth activity to Flaming Gorge, Utah, in northern Utah, and my friends loved to talk me into doing stupid things. I was the younger priest in the quorum, and they loved to cliff jump. We didn't dive, but this certain cliff had several levels, and we slowly worked our way up, and finally we got to one that was about 60 feet high. This isn't not me, but this is about where we were at Flaming Gorge. I found this photo, and they told me to go first. And as I stood on the edge of that cliff, I was like, this is a terrible idea. But, that impressed my peers. So I took that jump, and it just took forever to hit the water. Just 1, 2, 3, and just kind of flailing. And when I hit it was like hitting concrete. And it just felt like I broke my neck, honestly. That was my first indication. But what really happened is my body went deeper than my spirit. And so I was like 3/4 out of my body. It's like I came out through my head. And I looked around, and it was like a plane of white light, and just an amazing experience. I felt so peaceful and calm, and there were little particles of light that attached to my body, like they were just rushing at me. But within a few seconds, my body and spirit went back together. I later learned it wasn't the best fit. For 30 years, I was good at off. So I went to a chiropractor, and he fixed me, and it felt a lot better since then. So, but a few years later, we went on a family vacation to La Jolla, California. This La Jolla Cove. In the center of the picture there, you can kind of see some black rocks that go out. And my brother and I went out on the very tip of that at low tide. And as the tide started to shift, as we were looking for shells and things, a gigantic wave came and just plastered me. This is the same cove, a different angle, but that's about what that wave looked like. I was out on that tip, and then just looked up, and there was this wave right there. They just call it a rogue wave. Comes out of nowhere and smashed me, and I was sure I was going to die. And I was actually right. I did die. Suddenly I got hit by the wave, but then I was just standing up to, found myself just upright. I was a spirit. I was in an orange room, and well, not an orange room, but it was just an orange glow around me. And suddenly Daybell was my father's dad. He was in an army uniform, kind of a symbol of who he was. And he had with him his grandfather, Finity Daybell. And as Grandpa Keith talked to me, Finity was watching my body. It was floating around in the water, just kind of bouncing around, actually. And so I felt they knew they had a certain amount of time they could talk to me. And Grandpa Keith started telling me that in the future, I would write books based on my children's future. And he showed me like a panorama that just flipped through dozens of scenes, like a video wall, just showing me dozens of scenes of what I soon returned to my body and kind of coasted to shore. My dad rushed to me and they took me to the hospital. And I had to get a few years later, I started writing that series. And so that's how the Standing in Holy Places series began. It follows three families, and I kind of combined a couple of the children, but it really is the story of but the main character is named Emma, and that's my daughter, my oldest daughter. And it's just, at the time when I wrote it, I worked at a publishing company and we'd done a couple of near-death books, had some controversy about them. And so I felt inspired that it should be written fictionally and just not tell anybody that it's based on truth and just put it out there. And it sold really well. And so we did a couple of follow-ups. The Great Gathering starts right as there's an earthquake in Utah, Salt Lake Valley. And you follow some of the families go to the camp, some of them don't. And you see the outcome of that. And so they gather to the camps. The follow-up book talks about when they go to the and various other things such as the return of the 10 tribes. I felt I was shown a lot involved in that, so I was able to see how they were brought to New Jerusalem. The fourth book deals with Jerusalem itself quite a bit, with the two apostles that go to Jerusalem and help protect it, and then just other things that are occurring as Zion grows in America. And the fifth book talks about the second coming and the renewed earth. And that had a lot of interesting insights as I wrote those books. That's where I received a lot of my visions, if you want to call it. As I'm actually typing, it's like they're downloading the scenes into my head. And so people ask me, how much is true? I always say, you ought to do a version where you just yellow highlight the parts that are actually true, and then just but it would be hard to do because even within the same paragraph, there's a lot of truth. And as I progressed, it seemed like the visions increased. And so by the time I got to Renewed Earth, I felt pretty confident that at least the general major scenes that I was describing are going to occur. And I hope that that series testifies of Christ and that he is in control. That part about the second coming and the burning of the earth, earth, and their very glory will be what burns the earth as it transitions to a terrestrial level. I just felt very good about that series. I thought, wow, that was a 6-year project. I'll just rest on my laurels. And I did for about 3 days. And the Lord said, well, thanks for doing that series. Let's start another one. So this series, The Times of Turmoil, goes back to that first book, The Great Gathering. The Standing in Holy Places series is I said now to the Second Coming. And even as I was writing The Great Gathering, my dad says, he's my editor. He's like, man, you sure rushed that. Why didn't you slow it down? But I always knew that it had to be 5 books. And I just told him, I think I'll someday fill in a little more details. There were details I didn't even know at that time when I first wrote it. So as I started the Times of Turmoil series, then those added details came to me. And so as we talk about the yellow highlighter part, this series truly feels like it's going to happen. I feel that these characters, Nathan and Marie, exist. This one isn't really based on my kids like the other one. Not quite sure who they are, but I and as a maintenance missionary to help set up places of refuge and places of gathering in the mountains secretly.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, I believe we can have the jurors brought back in, please. All right, great.
Here's all present account for Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, we're back on the record on CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. Parties are present as well as the defense. Mr. Warwick's on the stand. I'll remind you, you're still under oath for your testimony. Mr. Wixom, continuing on direct examination. You may proceed, Mr. Wixom.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Warwick, I want to draw your attention back to that Sunday afternoon and evening after you looked at the property. When you came back, did you have any other interaction at all with JJ?
No,
Did you see him in the apartment that day?
I believe he was there Sunday afternoon when we came back.
Thinking back to the last time that you saw JJ, when was it that day? What time of day was it?
It was probably about 10:30 at night.
And what do you recall seeing him doing when you last saw him?
Alex came in the front door and JJ had JJ in his arms and he carried him upstairs and put him to bed. And JJ, was asleep. So
Now, at some point in that evening, did you do a podcast?
yeah, we did that Sunday night.
About what time of night, best you can recall?
And we started like 7:30 and we were just finishing it up when Alex brought JJ home.
And who all was at the podcast and participating?
Melanie and Lori and myself.
Was Chad there at that time?
No,
And where in the apartment did you do the podcast?
in Lori's kitchen.
So was the podcast happening before you saw Alex bring JJ in and take him upstairs?
Yes.
And then you slept
Right in there.
to the best that you understood.
Lori and Melanie, JJ and myself.
I don't think I asked this before, but at any point during the weekend, did you ever see Tylee at the apartment?
No,
Ever see her around anywhere?
no.
When you got up the next morning, did you have any more interactions with Lori?
Yes.
And what were those interactions?
We came downstairs. I came downstairs getting ready to leave for Pocatello. So I just went to say goodbye to Lori and JJ. And Lori was in the kitchen and she was a little dramatic. And I just said, well, we're leaving. I'd like to say goodbye to JJ. She said, oh, he was out of control. And I had to have Alex come and get him.
So, Mr. Warwick, other than what she said, you just used the word dramatic. What did you mean by that?
She just seemed really talking fast and nervous. It's kind of, when I meant by dramatic, she explained that he climbed up on the cabinets in the fridge and got on top of the upper cabinets. And the explanation of how JJ was acting was, I would say it was dramatic.
Was it different than your other interactions with Lori
Yeah,
on the cabinets?
based on the upper cabinet. And he said,
Did the cabinets?
no,
Why not?
because I didn't see any broken parts on the cabinet. I didn't see any scuffs on the fridge. And the crown on the top, if he would have got up there, that crown would have just pulled off.
Is cabinet crowning something you're familiar with as a builder?
Yes.
Did you say anything about this to Lori?
No, I just said, well, she said that he was having a possession attack. And so I said, well, I'd really like to see him. And she said, no, Alex has got him and he's taking care of him.
When she said he's having a possession attack, did she say anything else about that aspect of it?
No, just she just said she just couldn't handle it.
Your Honor, can I have just one moment, please?
Yes.
Thank you. At this time,
All right, thank you, Mr. Wixom. Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
Good afternoon. Married to Melanie Gibb.
Yes,
Okay, what was the date of the marriage?
December 10th, 2020.
Close and around the time of all of these occurrences. Is that fair?
Well, a year later, I guess.
Okay. And when did you first meet Miss Gibb?
Um, at a, uh, at a conference that, at UVU.
I'm sorry.
I'm
conference-
trying to remember the date.
That's okay. Just take your time. We're not in a hurry.
Okay. Met her at a conference, I think it was I don't remember the year. It's probably 2000, 2012 or 2013 or 14, somewhere in there.
Okay. And then approximately when did the two of you start dating?
We started in August of 2019.
Now, at the time, you had mentioned that it sort of offended you that Mr. Daybell was married and was seeing someone even though he was still legally married, right?
Well, in relation to the things that they were, like the beliefs that they were, didn't match up.
The beliefs didn't match up.
Well, what they were saying they were doing about their calling and then seeing each other
Okay.
didn't match up. That's,
Inconsistent. He was-
yeah, it's so you
he was
just,
having- I'm sorry.
oh, I'm done, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I'm done.
Okay. So what he was preaching wasn't consistent with the way he was acting. Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay, but at the time you started dating Miss Gibb, you were still married too, weren't you?
Yeah, my divorce was just getting finalized.
But you started dating her while you were still legally married, weren't you?
Well, I made the mistake. I thought I was doing the 30-day waiver
Okay.
on, for the time.
Mhm.
And, but I didn't understand that the judge needed another 60 days after the 30 days. And I'd already paid for two plane tickets to have some time with her in August with my son Nicholas. And so we just went forward and went and did those two things for August.
So in other words, you traveled, so when you met her in August of 2019, you were already planning on going on a vacation with her, is that right?
No, not a vacation.
What was it?
One was the Zion. It was called the Zion's Camp. It's a kind of an educational camp,
Okay.
and I wanted to see how how she would do with my son Nicholas.
Okay. And
But I was taking care of my son Nicholas. That was the whole reason for the divorce, because my wife at the time, it was too much. We had him with us for several weeks. And so I don't have time. I don't know how much time you want for the details, but that was the whole motivation was,
you divorced your wife because she wasn't taking proper care of your son Nicholas, and it's all about Nicholas, right?
no, we mutually agreed. We
Okay.
did not want a divorce, but
I-
but we needed to get Nicholas out of the home that he was in because he was suffering some abuses there.
Okay.
If you'd like to go into more, I'd be happy to.
You don't have to.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't
That's
want to
what
go
you-
into this
okay.
much, but I just wanted to clarify a few things that were of a concern, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Now, I do want to talk a little bit about an organization called the Seven Gatherers. You're familiar with that, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And to your knowledge, your wife isn't a member of the Seven Gatherers, right?
I don't know anything about Seven Gatherers.
Okay, thank you. Go to various camps and conferences and meetings and speak about religious subjects. Is that fair?
Yes,
And both of you have I don't want to use the term expertise, a knowledge of certain areas of religious beliefs. Would that be fair?
yes.
And your particular area of knowledge is in what?
It's about, there was the conversion, my conversion to Christ and his church, and the gifts and dreams and visions that came afterwards.
Okay. So when we talk about land, it's really about you go to these camps in rural, these fireside chats is what they're talking about or mentioned as, correct? Fireside chats?
Yes, I would be a speaker at the fireside, one of the firesides at the camp.
And the subject that you would discuss would be visions that you have that you would want to translate to them and talk to these people at these fireside chats about these various visions and experiences, premonitions that you have.
No, it was about my conversion and the faith, and then the fruits of that faith.
Oh, you
It
never.
was to build faith. It
Oh.
was the camps in much detail. There's many aspects to dreams and visions about many topics. So it was about, the whole purpose was to help inspire people to seek God,
Okay.
to seek his truth, in relationship with the Holy Ghost, bearing witness of that truth.
Okay. So the fact that you experience these visions and you have these visions, that's not necessarily what you're talking to these people about, but you do in fact have made various representations about visions that you've had over the years. Is that right?
Yes,
And some of these visions have included being invaded by foreign powers, right?
You can
I'm sorry,
change.
Judge, I missed that.
I overrule the objection because it wasn't timely.
Okay, all right, thank you, Judge. And some of these visions deal with religious matters as well.
yes.
And that's something that you've gone to conferences to speak about as well, right?
And aspects.
Right.
They're just
Okay.
depending on the topics and then whatever I felt right in my heart that was allowed to be.
And really, it's your experience in your it's your experience in your LDS faith that you're trying to communicate with these people and talk about these conversions and things that you've experienced as part of your understanding of your LDS faith. Is that-
Objection, Your Honor, Rule 610.
Judge, could we approach and have a sidebar?
Yes. All right, council, we are back on the record on CR 22211623. The court had a sidebar to make an evidentiary ruling outside presence of the jurors. I sustain an objection and I'll ask the jurors to disregard the previous question. Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to continue with your cross, you may.
So, Mr. Warwick, we were on the subject of visions. And that you explained to me that these visions are only a small part of what you lecture at these fireside mountain retreats and at these conferences and at these meetings. Is that fair?
Yes.
And part of these visions is consistent with your faith, right?
Yes.
So if you were to have these various visions about certain events, that's not something that's particularly inconsistent with your faith, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And if Chad Daybell were to have visions of certain events, that's not necessarily inconsistent with his faith either, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit because I'm a little unclear. There's been some testimony about what vibrations are. Do you understand the term vibrations?
I understand the term, but I don't understand the context.
Okay, the context is in a religious context, that you get some sort of feedback that has a religious perspective to it. So in that context, do you understand or have had familiarity with that process?
Yes.
Okay, what is that experience or knowledge that you have as it relates to vibrations?
Not understanding what you're after, Mr. Pryor.
Okay, well, in a religious context, you know, have you participated in meetings or gatherings that dealt with? Has your wife gone on seminars and spoke about, while you were there, about this theory and idea of vibrations?
Not that I recall.
Okay, all right. Then what is your wife's been as well has been called to a number of places to speak as well as a guest at a number of places, correct?
Yes.
And it's similar topics, but hers has a little bit of a slant. What's her area of knowledge?
This is more about believing and overcoming unbelief.
Okay, and be more specific if you could.
Okay.
Like in what way? Overcoming non-belief? What do you mean?
Well, she did health. Actually, hers was more on health. The ones that I've seen, because she does foot reflexology
Okay.
and teaches about the body, and works with the nerves through the feet.
Okay. All right.
Because a lot of the speaking things that she had done, I was not involved with. A lot of that had happened before we got together.
And the items that she would talk about.
I've never witnessed what she spoke about.
By the way, Mr. Warwick, please don't just interject in your
Sorry.
response in the middle of anyone else talking. It's difficult for the court reporter.
And Mr. Warwick, I'm going to be guilty of that too a couple of times. So we'll try to be patient with each other. Okay.
Okay.
So when you say before you met her, she's been speaking about religious topics before you folks even met, right?
Yes.
And you guys met again when?
Officially, we met the end of May 2019.
Okay. But unofficially, you met well before that in what, 2012?
Yeah, she was at the line of people and they just came up to appreciated the talk that I gave. That was it.
And prior to May of 2019, it was she engaged in the same sort of speaking circuit. She would go to these fireside retreats and she would do these conferences well before she ever met Chad Daybell, right?
Yeah, but she wasn't, from my understanding, she was not a speaker for years. She just they organized some podcast. I can't remember the name of it right now. Anyway, and that's what that's what they were mainly doing with us. I never recall I'd ever seen her speak at any of these events.
So she would organize these events and she would sort of gather these people and bring the groups together to talk about these various religious subjects, right?
Religious and health and just let me know what they've been doing.
Which one of you talked at these preparedness camps about you know, and you know what I'm talking about, these preparedness camps that you would go up to, right? And what exactly were they preparing for?
Oh, they just basically teaching you how to different ways to be self-reliant through growing food, have energy, and it was any topic that to be prepared so that you know when tribulations or you're able to provide and be able to do better serve. I there's all kinds of things about how to cook and how to set up camps, all kinds of.
You weren't teaching about cooking, right?
What's that?
You weren't teaching about cooking, right?
Nope.
You weren't teaching
I
about.
didn't teach. I just gave a fireside. I just shared my story of my conversion.
And your visions to some extent.
To some extent, there'd be some that would come up, but not much on a
Right.
camp like that.
About some of the things that you predicted that would happen in the future, right?
Not that I'd predict. Not it was what I was shown.
Oh, I'm sorry. I made a mistake.
Yeah, it's not me.
Right. It's not you that are making these. They aren't predictions. They're, and please forgive me. You put the right word on it. They're premonitions about things that you saw that you believe you need to share with other people. Is that fair?
No.
They're visions of things that you see that are brought to you some way and that you believe are things that would occur in the future. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you've heard the term light and dark. Are you familiar with those terms?
Yes.
Light and dark, would you agree with me that the term light and dark are synonymous with the words good and evil?
Yeah. Yes.
They could be interchanged.
Yes.
And it just depends really on your how you're brought up, what terms your family's using. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Some families will say, this is good and this is evil. Other families would say, this is light and this is dark. Would you agree with that?
I've never heard the light and dark explained that way. I've always heard that they just say this is good and evil.
Okay.
I've never heard explained the way you just said it.
Okay, but you've heard the terms light and dark,
Mm-hmm.
and the light and dark term is in at least your faith is referenced a number of times in your faith.
Yes.
We can go back and show you you're aware of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so that's not a foreign term to you, the term light and dark, right?
Right.
Okay, that's part of your faith, right?
It's part of life.
Right. All right. Well,
I wasn't raised. I didn't have faith, and I knew about light and dark way before faith.
okay. And Mr. Daybell and you share at least the same faith generally in the beginning, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Daybell would be familiar with the term light and dark. He's spoken to you about that, right?
Yes.
Okay. But the area that I'm confused is the area called portals. Have you heard that term?
Yes.
Okay. And was teaching about dark portals, was that something your wife would ever do?
I don't know. I never heard her teach.
Okay. So you don't know if she's teaching anybody about a dark portal or a light portal or any kind of portal, right?
Right.
Okay. Judge, this might be a place where we can gather up again. It's up to the court. I can either go on or whatever the court prefers.
All right, I know it feels like we've had breaks today, but I'm pretty committed to keeping our jurors on the schedule that we've determined. So we are going to take our break for the day. We'll conclude and continue on with further cross tomorrow. Warwick, I'll be asking you again in the morning if you've reviewed any of this trial testimony or anything. So you're still subject to that exclusionary order. For the jurors, again, to review or investigate the case in any way. If you see any news coverage, footage, etc., don't try to avert your attention from that, I should say. Don't discuss the case or the evidence amongst yourselves or with anyone else. You can only do that once your deliberations have begun. And with that, I appreciate your attentiveness today. We're going to go ahead and recess for the evening, and we'll begin again tomorrow morning again at 8:30 as well. All right, we're in recess.
All right.
Okay, and that is going to conclude our session for today. No, I've never heard of light and dark or vibrations like Lori and Chad use it. Yeah, I did seminary, I did institute, never heard it. I mean, light and dark, yeah, I've heard of the terms, but not in terms of percentage and how far they are to being dead and so forth. And vibrations, never. I've never heard that. So anyway, I don't know. Pryor's really being a slime ball, trying to imply the fact that he started seeing Melanie before the divorce was final makes him no better than Chad Daybell, but Chad Daybell was actively married still and not pursuing a divorce, hadn't predicted his wife's David Warwick hadn't predicted his wife's death, and nobody ended up dead. No kids in the backyard, nothing. So vibrations in New Age, yeah, but not in LDS context. And I don't know. It seems to me that they were into a lot of way out there stuff. And when people get into way out there stuff, sometimes they really go off the deep end. So not a good thing. My sister did that, and she ended up as a 3-time polygamous wife before she came to her senses. So now she's married to a guy who's never had any other wives. So, and he says the best thing he ever did was marry her. So, all right. Well, we will resume in the morning and look forward to that. And I don't know who we'll have up after David Warwick. So, okay. Well, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.